Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker at online booksellers today. Shazam! Fury of the Gods flopped at the box office this weekend. Now, Shazam! Fury of the Gods was supposed to open at an anemic $30 to $35 million. Unfortunately, the film opened at only $30 million at the box office. Now, Shazam! Fury of the Gods cost over $110 million to make and $100 million to market, which means that this film would have to make $600 million in order to break even. Now, many at Warner Brothers are scratching their heads about why Shazam! Fury of the Gods flopped. However, when I was looking at the trailer, I saw the reason why this movie was going to fail. Now, like Black Adam before it, Shazam! Fury of the Gods suffered from a mediocre script and a lack of focus because the film didn't know whether or not it wanted to be an intense action movie or if it wanted to be an action comedy like Peter Safran imagined back in 2019 when he made the first Shazam movie. And because this film lacked a serious focus of direction for where it wanted to go, we got a very mediocre movie which had a very generic storyline, very generic special effects, and a story that was basically all over the place, made at an extremely high budget. Now, one of the big problems I have seen with many of these superhero movies as of late is that many of these films just have these huge budgets that would be impossible for them to recoup their costs as related to the box office. And Shazam! Fury of the Gods, like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, has an extremely big budget that there was no way possible for this film to recoup its costs, because at a cost of $100 million for marketing and $110 million for the budget, that means that this film would have to go out here and make over $600 million to break even, and it would possibly have to make $1 billion at the box office to pull a profit. So this film, due to the proportions of the cost, was never going to be profitable, and many of these Hollywood studio executives knew that they basically financed a movie that was going to be in the hole from minute one. Because like the Hollywood of the late 1960s, what the executives who are running the entire superhero movie trend are doing is going out here and financing these big budget movies with these huge costs, not ever thinking critically about how they're going to recoup the costs of these movies. Because many of these Hollywood executives, like those at Warner Brothers, they believe that the superhero movie trend was going to go on forever, and because they believed that the superhero movie trend was going to go on forever, they went out here financing larger and larger budgets, similar to their predecessors back in the 1960s, who were out here financing these big budget musicals, big budget war movies, big budget epic movies, and these big budget biopics, thinking, oh, the audience was going to stay the same. However, the audience tastes have changed as related to superhero movies, and one of the reasons I believe that people's tastes changed as related to superhero movies is because the audience sees these movies as basically coming off an assembly line. And Shazam! Fury of the Gods basically felt like a movie that came off the assembly line, like a car at the GM plant, and it felt like a movie that just came off the assembly line, just one after the other. It didn't have a distinct story. It didn't have a distinct focus. and it didn't answer a critical question many screenwriters had to answer, and that question a screenwriter has to answer before they put a finger to the keyboard is, why should we care? And there really wasn't much reason to care about Shazam! Fury of the Gods, because the gods themselves were not a villain that we could care about anyway at all. They weren't really a part of Shazam's Rogues Gallery. No, Captain Marvel Rogue would have been Black Adam. However, Black Adam was a part of his own movie starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and the confrontation between Shazam and Black Adam never materialized, and because that didn't materialize, again, audiences didn't care, especially comic fans who really wanted to see the Shazam taking on Black Adam, and they also wanted to see Henry Cavill as Superman. So many comic fans really had no reason to get excited about this movie, because this movie didn't answer a critical question for comic fans. Why should I care about Shazam! Fury of the Gods when we're not going to get to see his bad guys? I mean, we did get to see Siviana in the first Shazam, and that was giving people a reason to go watch the movie, but we didn't get to see his other rogues like Mr. Mind or some of his other bad guys, and that made it where this film was already starting off on a wrong foot. And as this film started off on a wrong foot, as related to its screenplay, this is where the film was not able to get people excited as related to this movie. Now, compounding this lack of interest from comic fans, who are the core base of customers, was the announcement by Warner Brothers and David Zaslav that James Gunn and Peter Safran were creating a new DC cinematic universe. And because of this announcement, this also threw even more cold water on Shazam! Fury of the Gods heat, because since the DC cinematic universe was basically ending as related to this announcement, even less people in fandom had a reason to care about Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So all of those comic fans who would have possibly wanted to go see this movie because it was a part of the DC extended universe, they had no reason to go out here and spend money to go see this movie. And they had no reason to go see this movie because this universe was ending and everything in this universe no longer mattered. And since nothing in this universe mattered anymore, nobody had a reason to care about Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Now, Shazam! Fury of the Gods also made a promise of a Wonder Woman cameo who was played by Gal Gadot, but again, nobody had a reason to go out here and watch Shazam! Fury of the Gods with that cameo by Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, because again, the universe was ending, but it also showed a major contradiction as related to Warner Brothers and how they mistreated Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, because Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had Henry Cavill coming on in a cameo in Black Adam, but we have Gal Gadot making a cameo as Wonder Woman, and we're told, okay, the cameo by Gal Gadot is fine, but the cameo by Henry Cavill, oh, that shouldn't build up our anticipation. Again, showing me a double standard and also showing me the racism that goes on at Warner Brothers, because they didn't like the idea of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson going out here and making a statement about the direction of the DC extended universe. So they go out here and yank the rug out from Henry Cavill returning as Superman. But it's okay for Gal Gadot, who is a part of the same DC extended universe, to make a cameo as Wonder Woman, showing me again the racism that goes on behind the scenes as related to the DC extended universe run by David Zaslav, James Gunn, and Peter Safran. They can go out here and disrespect the white man playing Superman, but it's okay for the white woman to play Wonder Woman, and they're all part of the same universe, showing me how completely full of it those at Warner Brothers are as related to their universe, and they're sitting there wondering, oh, why did this movie flop? Well, this movie flopped because basically your Warner Brothers went out here and are their own worst enemy once more, like they have been for the last 30 plus years. Warner Brothers basically undermined the success of their own movies because you still have the same inept and incompetent leadership running this Warner Brothers, and because they're running Warner Brothers, they're basically running themselves into the ground, similar to what many Hollywood executives did back in the late 1960s and 1970s when they almost bankrupted Hollywood because they continued to invest in old trends as related to films and could not see that the audience was transitioning away from these kinds of films. Because those old executives back then couldn't see that the Vietnam War was going on and that many of the baby boomers were not interested in watching a musical or a epic war movie while people who they knew were coming home in caskets and hearing about how people were getting mutilated in the killing fields of Vietnam. They were still sitting there thinking, oh, we can continue to make the same kinds of movies because we enjoy them. And it was all about sating their ego instead of trying to go out here and try to find something to appeal to the audience. And the same thing is happening with the superhero movie crowd. And with the superhero movie crowd, what is happening right now is that the audience has basically burnt out on these movies because, again, many of these movies are just coming off an assembly line like 1982 Chevrolet Citations and like the 1982 Chevrolet Citation and the GM X-Body cars. While these cars are what the creators want to have on the market, many of the customers are having problems with these movies, and these movies, again, they come across as very bland, they come across as very generic, they come across as very boring, and they also have some of the same generic off-the-shelf special effects. Unfortunately, they don't have very compelling stories, and they don't have very compelling stories because many of the screenwriters wind up getting nerfed by the studio executives who want to go out here and make these films become merchandise kings, and what they want to do is go out here and try to profit from the licensing. They want to profit from pandering to international audiences like China, and they wind up going out here trying to sell a movie without having any sort of confidence or faith in their product. And because of this, we get very jumbled, unfocused movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and Shazam: Fury of the Gods. And because these movies really don't have a message, a heart, a soul, or a spirit, there's no reason to care about these movies, and even less reason to care about these movies when you hear, oh, they're going to reboot the DC Cinematic Universe. So DC basically shot itself in the foot, and Warner Brothers, which was already in dire straits as a media company, they are really looking at this and thinking about the other three movies they've got coming out. They've got the Blue Beetle movie, they've got the Flash movie, which I already am refusing to go see because of Ezra Miller, and they've got Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So you've got three multi-million-dollar movies that are possibly going to all flop, because when I look at what happened to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and I look at Shazam: Fury of the Gods, I'm seeing a trend which is showing me the end of the entire superhero movie craze. And like many other movie crazes, like the horror movie craze of the 80s, the action movie craze of the 80s, and the rom-com trend of the 90s, it's looking like things are getting ready to wrap up as related to the superhero movie, and things are wrapping up as related to the superhero movie because, again, you can only make a certain genre of films for a certain amount of time before the audience eventually winds up burning out. And that's what a seasoned person who knows the entertainment industry understands. And that's why they would have had a contingency by making some small budget indie films or some small budget other types of films to offset those costs, But today's Hollywood executives, again, they've got tunnel vision like their grandfathers had back in the 1960s. And because they have tunnel vision like they did back in the 1960s, what they did is put all their eggs in the superhero movie basket. And the sad part is the superhero movie basket is breaking. And the superhero movie basket is breaking because the genre is over 30 years old. I mean, we've been making superhero movies since 1989 when they made the first Batman. That's when the start of the superhero movie craze really started. Because yes, we did have Superman 1978, and it was a great movie, but that whole franchise just died out around 1987 or so. I believe it died in 1983 with Superman 3. But the superhero movie craze started with Batman in '89, and we did stall out around 1997. Then Blade revived the entire genre. But at this point, almost 30 plus years later, I'm believing that the whole trend is basically over because people are burnt out on superhero movies. They're burnt out on watching these kinds of movies. They've seen basically everything at this point that they want to see. And there's not really much material to adapt anymore as related to these films, because when I look at the Ezra Miller Flash movie, it's just a rehash of Flashpoint, which was done already in animation 2 times and also done in the Flash CW TV show. So you're adapting material over and over again, and the audience is just like, yeah, I've seen this before. Or if you're a comic fan, yeah, I've read this before. There's nothing special about this movie. And again, this does not answer the critical question a screenwriter like myself has to answer when we put fingers to the keyboard. Why should the audience care? And the audience has no reason to care anymore about superhero movies. And it has no reason to care because, again, the genre has been done to death to this point. And it's a turning point I see as related to Hollywood these days, that they're going to have to find another genre of movie, and they're going to have to find another genre of movie fast, because they are in the same place Hollywood was in the late 60s, where you have Disney, a studio that's basically on the brink of bankruptcy. You have Warner Brothers, which is getting teetering and tottering towards bankruptcy, and these studios are struggling at this point. And they're in a lot of debt. And when they see movies like this flopping after spending hundreds of millions of dollars, they're at a breaking point, because again, they were out here spending this money and not looking at the proportions of their costs. Because with the original Shazam movie, the proportions of the cost were reasonable. I believe that film only cost $50 million or so, and basically opened at $50 million, and the rest was just profit. But with this movie, they went out here and they spent over $110 million, which is a low budget for a movie, $100 million more for marketing. And again, that was a hole this movie could never get out of, because again, at that cost, that's over $200 million, and you would need $600 million to break even. And you would need $1 billion for this movie to go out here and make a profit. So this film was never going to be profitable, especially when they launch it in a slow month like March. And then and Disney made the same mistake with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. They went out here and launched this movie during a period where the audience really is not eager to go out and see movies. And you have to also understand the schedule for films, and that's something I understand from studying the entertainment industry. When a studio is launching a movie in March, that means they don't have much faith in that movie, and it's a time that this film is going to flop. So I'm looking at the entire trend for superhero movies, and when I look at Shazam: Fury of the Gods, it doesn't look like people are passionate about superhero movies anymore. And it's looking like the studios have been caught off guard, and Warner Brothers was definitely caught off guard, because now they've got 3 other movies that are destined to flop, because the audience, as I see it again, is tired of the superhero movie. They are burnt out on superhero movies. They are burnt out on these characters. They're burnt out on these stories. and the audience wants something new, fresh, and exciting as related to the genre of movies. Many people, as I see it, are looking for that comedy because we just came out of a pandemic and people just want to laugh, they want to joke, they want something to help them escape from problems, and they want something unique and different. This is why movies like Top Gun, Maverick did well. This is why Cocaine Bear is doing well, and this is why other movies are doing better. And these were genres that Hollywood ignored because they were fixated on the superhero movie, and because we got a lot of nerds who are now executives, they want to see their dream projects come to life. But the dream is over for the superhero movie as I see it, because when you have two movies already flopping at the box office due to their high cost, all we need is a third to certify the end of the genre, because in Hollywood, when you have 3 straight flops, that's when people start saying it's time for this actor or this genre of movie to be given a rest. Because when you've had 3 straight flops, what that tells us is that the audience doesn't care anymore. And it's looking to me like the audience is stopped caring about the superhero movie. And it's looking to me like the world is looking to move on from men in tights saving the world. And they want to see some stories about regular people. So when I look at the Shazam Fury of the Gods and why it flopped at the box office, it looks like to me that the entire trend of the superhero movie is basically over at this point. And the only people trying to keep it going are those guys who have vehemently invested in it. And they don't want it to end because they want to keep profiting, but I don't believe that anybody cares about the new DC cinematic universe at this point, because the audience has already had its fill of superheroes and nobody wants to reboot into another universe of characters after watching this set of characters. So when I look at the entire DC and Marvel cinematic universe, I believe that we're at the end of the entire genre of superhero movies, and it's time for the studios to start making plans to move on to other kinds of stories. Now, if you want to pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, or the John Haynes series, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback, along with other stories that I write, like the Goth Spinsterella trilogy, or my sorority novel, The Thetas, or my vampire novel, Eternal Night. And you can also find my romantic comedy, A Recipe for Success, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can find all these books on Amazon and other online booksellers like Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos about comics, science fiction, and fantasy, you can send a donation to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online booksellers everywhere today. Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at Lulu.com today.